A few months ago, I knit my first lace shawl. The process was a huge learning experience, and one of the most important things I learned it wasn't as hard as I had been dreading it would be. It's easy to get intimidated by such large projects, so I wanted to try again after I finished and document the process for others. I want to break it down into its parts to get a better idea of what goes into such a seemingly large project. This time I'm going to be making the Black Lavender Shawl by Jolly Knits. I have a pattern and the matching yarn that I purchased through the website, which I will link down in the description. For this, I've also got a timer so I can get a better idea of how long something of this size will take to make. And I will make a list here of the materials you will need or that I used, and we'll leave this list in the description as well. So here now is a list of the techniques you will need to complete this pattern. You'll obviously need to know the two basic stitches, knit and purl, and you'll also need to know knit two together, which is exactly what it sounds like. Instead of one stitch, you knit two stitches to reduce your stitch count by one. The next is slip, knit, pass over, where you slip the first stitch, knit the stitch next to it, and then pass the slip stitch over your knit stitch. This will also reduce your stitch count by one. Then knit three together. Knit three together is basically what knit two together is, but you'll knit three and decrease your stitch count by two. And finally, you'll need yarn over, where you will pull the yarn around your needle and knit the next stitch, increasing your stitch count by one and leaving a small decorative hole in your project. I'll check in at the end of the project to give my final notes and a review of the pattern and the yarn that I used. So with that being said, let's get started. So here we have the Black Lavender Gradient yarn from Jolly Knits. This yarn is a 3-ply 100% merino extra fine yarn. One ball is about 750 meters or 150 grams. Yarn itself wasn't overly expensive, about $20 US, and is supposed to be enough for one shawl. And that's pretty decent price for merino yarn, especially being homemade with every ball being unique, as said by the card that came with the yarn. Also comes with this cute little made with love heart pendant, which I believe comes with every single little ball we get, as we can see with the picture here. One of these is supposed to be enough to make one full shawl according to the pattern that came with this. For that, we're going to need our needles. Now, reading the pattern only says that this yarn is supposed to be knit with needles sizing from 3 to 4.5 millimeters, but it doesn't indicate what size to use and when to change needles, or if you're even supposed to change needles in the first place. So to kind of go on the average there, I'm going to use my 4mm circular needles to create this project. If we take a look at the sketch of what the finished product is supposed to look like that I've done, we're actually going to start knitting at the top where it's the lightest and work our way to the edge here, the long side, where it is the darkest. But if we look at the yarn we have the outside being the darkest and the inside being the lightest. So to make up for this problem, I'm going to roll this yarn into one ball with the inside being the darkest and the outside being the lightest. If you have a rolling machine, that would also work, but I don't have that, so I'm just going to do it by hand. Alright, so we've rolled the yarn into a nice ball. After taking another look at what needles I have on hand, I noticed I have a set of 3.75 millimeter circular needles, so I'm going to try using these and see how that goes. Taking another look at the pattern, it doesn't call for any particular cast-on method, so since we're only starting with 7 stitches and working down and increasing with each row, I'm going to do a long tail cast-on since it's fast and my favorite style. welcome back. So that took longer than I expected. I was expecting it to take just a little under 25 hours, but as you can see by the timer, it took just about 30, and I ended up having to finish early, which I will get into in a moment. So let's start with the positives of this project. This was really fun to do. The yarn behaved really well, and the pattern was easy to read. I made a few mistakes down here, especially in the last little bit, but that came out to me not reading the pattern properly, miscounting stitches, and generally kind of fumbling around, not really knowing what I was doing. The creator of this yarn did a really great job with the color changes. As you can see here, it's pretty smooth, even coming from the lighter colors, as it slowly gets darker and finishes really dark. But even the darker stuff still has a really good deal of the dark purples in it. It's not just black, which I really love. So let's get on to the negatives. What can I say that's negative about this? Actually, there's one kind of big thing that really bothered me. The pattern didn't specify what size of needles to use. It just said it would recommend using from 3mm to 4.5mm. And anyone who's worked with those size needles before knows that that's actually quite a big difference in the size of the pattern and your stitches. And to not specify might not make a big deal if you had enough yarn. So I decided to use the mid-size needle, even though I was originally going to go with the larger size because I wanted the pattern to be larger. So using the mid-size needle, I thought I would be okay, but it turned out I wasn't. I was actually 10 rows short of the final project on the pattern, and I ran out of yarn, which I was not at all expecting. So it's hard to see, but these sort of little rows, this triangle here, was supposed to extend a lot further than it did, but I just had to finish because I ran out of yarn. Like I said, I could not go another row as much as I would have loved to. And it also didn't specify a cast on or cast off method that would work best. Cast on is not a big deal because you're only casting on 7 stitches, so you really can't tell at the beginning of the project because it's such a small amount. I ended up having to YouTube other methods of casting off, and I didn't find the right one. The one I found claimed it would be a very loose one, but my stitches are naturally pretty tight and even, as you can see. So my cast off ended up being too tight even when I blocked it, so it curls no matter what I do, which for me is a bit of a shame because I think that kind of ruins the final project. And that's all I really have to say about it. The creator of the yarn and the pattern, it's beautiful, the pattern is amazing. I would highly recommend checking it out if you are interested in this and you have the time to do such a project. I hope this video has been somewhat informative about time and resources that go into making a project, and I really hope that you enjoy the next project you undertake, whether it's a shawl, or a scarf, or a sweater, or something smaller. So, happy knitting, and I'll see you in the next video.